Should we make teens use landlines instead of mobile phones? The number is 027 862 2222. We accept landlines or mobile phones. Hang on a minute. Getting a call now. Hello? Right. Yeah. Oh, thanks very much. I think they wanted to speak to you, actually, Anne. But thank you very much. Apparently, the caller says a boarding school in Oxford has reintroduced landlines in a bid to tackle its students' smartphone addictions. They say St Edward's School reports increased participation in after-school sports and boosted the number of library books borrowed. What a good thing. So I suppose there's not much of this anymore. Just have a look.
Okay, so it's Lloyd, and let's go out. You want to go out?
Oh, thanks, but I'm busy.
Busy?
Yes. Things are pretty hectic right now, but thanks.
Now, should we roll back the clock and tell kids if they want to talk to their friends, they need to use landlines? Michael, are you all about going backwards?
Yes, on this particular issue. I think the evidence is mounting up that social media and smartphones, I mean, it's bad for me. I think most adults think I can't concentrate as long. I'm constantly looking at social media. I've actually deleted Twitter and Instagram off my phone now because I realised any time I was in a queue that lasted more than 10 seconds, I'd be opening my social media and then get caught scrolling. So if it's too addictive for adults, I think it's clearly too addictive for children.
And is that right? Are you constantly on Instagram and TikTok, thirsty for likes?
I don't do any social media other than a Substack. That is all that I do, for exactly the reason that you've given. It's a massive thief of time. And I certainly think that children in school should not have mobiles. However, this is a boarding school, and one assumes, therefore, that they do need to talk to their parents from time to time. But when we talk about going back to landlines, I, having grown up using nothing but a landline, can vividly remember parents emerging into the hall from time to time and saying, that is not a free instrument. And the costs of teenagers nattering on the landline are huge.
Well, you know, just to be clear what the numbers are, the vast majority of children in the UK own a smartphone by the age of 11, with ownership rising from 44% at the age of 9 and 91%. And that's, you know, a sort of interesting thing. One of the outcomes here that this boarding school have noticed is that as soon as you put the mobile phones away, they've seen group participation grow, be that in sports, in reading. And the reason this started is because the headmaster went into the boarding house and noticed that none of the kids were talking to each other. And that creates social exclusion and all of those things. And I have to say, there'll be a lot of head teachers. I have the privilege of going into a number of comprehensive schools where smartphones are banned during the day. You know, I wonder whether that might be a happy outcome of all of this.
Oh, absolutely. I suppose the point here, though, is this goes further, right? So I think there is now a growing consensus that it's not the case that you shouldn't just not have your phone out in class. You should not have your phone during the school day. You don't want them, as soon as they're going to lunch, all on their phones. It's just bad for their concentration, bad for their social lives. But I suppose what this boarding school has managed to trial is the idea of not only taking away their phones during the school day, but also taking away their phones in the evening. Now, obviously, that would be harder to enforce outside of a boarding school. But I think what's interesting here as well is that the mobile phone issue, it's a bit of a collective action problem. So lots of parents would like their child not to have a phone, but they think if they don't have a phone and all their friends have a phone, then they'd be left out. So we do need some way of all making that decision at the same time.
FOMO, have you heard of that, Anne? Fear of missing out.
Yeah. Yes, of course I've heard of it, yes.
Well, I mean, you can see that the point that's being made. It's very difficult as a parent to say to a child when everybody else has got social media, you're going to be excluded unless you have one as well.
I think parents simply should find the courage. And I think once one does, you know, another will follow and will say, oh, well, you know, if so-and-so can do it, so can we.
You know, one of the problems here is that last year, as of last year, the majority of households no longer own a home phone for the first time. Just 47% of homes have a landline in any event. So I think this would be rather difficult to police.
Well, I suppose you could have a norm of having just one smartphone per family. I don't know how this is going to work practically. I suppose in terms of the collective action problem, there's a really interesting book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. It's been in the bestsellers list for a year. Really changed people's minds on this. And he was suggesting that what you should do as parents to solve the collective action problem is clubbed together, you know,
Exactly.
6 families, and then you all say, our kids aren't going to have the phones, and then you take them to do lots of fun things on the weekend so that they're not.
Doesn't he
then
also say
excluded.
benign neglect is a way to bring up children? Like, let them get on with it. You only get involved when you absolutely need to. And so much of this anxious generation has been born out of mobile phone use and the addiction to getting hearts on all of these social media platforms.
I just hearts.
Hearts. When you like
A like.
you get a like.
But on Instagram, it's a heart.
Yeah.
So,
That's why so many politicians are addicted to it. And when they say something and people like it, they get a little dose of dopamine and they think that everybody's agreeing with them. Tia, in London, would you agree with this?
Yes, I agree with that too. I've got 2 sons, and I would prefer it to go back to we having just landlines and not mobile phones, because I think it's more safer.
Well, how would you go about doing it? I mean, it's quite difficult to be a parent nowadays. And we're talking about Jonathan Haidt there and how, you know, kids are in the real world with all of these mobile phones.
Well,
one of the reasons for that is that parents they want to monitor their kids. And when they've got mobile phones, one of the things they can do is track where they are.
Well, that's what I do. And my mum does that, and my sister. So we do track our kids, my children.
Well, how are you going to do that if they've only got landlines, Tia?
Well, that's the problem. I won't be able to do that. But at least, no, you got me there. You got me there. But I would say if it got landlines, my kids like to be on the computer all the time anyway. So they be in the home, and landlines, that's in the home.
Tia, can I ask you, just sorry to interrupt, but do your kids know that you're tracking them during the day?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
And
they
what
turn it
happens
off
if
when
they? What happens if they go? Well, first of all, why do you do that? What's the fear? I mean, I presume when you were growing up, your parents couldn't tell where you were.
No, they didn't. But
So what's the fear for your? What's the fear for your kids? Why do you do it?
Well, for my kids, I'm scared maybe something might happen to them, as their father got murdered 6 years ago in East Barnet Village.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just scared for them, and it's a bit scary out there.
Well, you've obviously got legitimate reason to be scared. But thanks for calling, Tia. I mean, that's an interesting thing, and Tia's got that personal experience. That's why, you know, in Tia's case, a very real worry about the safety of her kids. I think that's often the reason why parents want kids to have smartphones, but they don't want all of the harms of social media.
I mean, you know, when I was growing up, obviously there weren't smartphones, but when I was growing up, it was perfectly normal for children to be out all day.
Yeah.
Parents had no idea where they were. They'd set certain rules, don't take this from strangers, etc. They'd no idea where they were. We used to play, we used to roam, and the only stipulation was you came back by the time appointed.
That was my childhood as well.
Yeah,
and
well,
we're not necessarily
today's
similar.
missing out, actually.
Today's missing out.
my childhood as well, really. And so it's very recent, this idea that parents, and you know, obviously all respect to Tia. I'm
Yeah,
not saying she's
absolutely,
unreasonable,
yeah,
of course, but
absolutely,
it's a very recent phenomenon that parents expect to know where their children are 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I suppose because once people are used to it, now they think it's unsafe not to know. But as we've all just said, for thousands of years, parents haven't known where their kids are for most of the day. It's only an expectation which has grown up in the last 10 years, and it has all of these downsides, which is sort of anxiety, kids being obsessed about how many likes they get.
Well, it's clearly working, and as far as I'm concerned, it gets more kids into libraries reading. That's got to be an upside, not least because they can read my book, which came out on Wednesday. Now, after the break...